Hey, this is Malcom X, author of Urban Xcellence, Unveiling Extraordinary Stories by Everyday People, and you're listening to So Book and Cool with Jewel B.
Welcome to So Book and Cool. It's Jewel B. Happy New Year. Today's guest is a writer, curator, and founder and host of the Urban X podcast, as well as the founder of Urban X.NYC, the blog. He is also the author of the new book, Urban Xcellence, Unveiling Extraordinary Stories for Everyday People. He is Malcom X Bowser. Hey, Malcolm.
Hi, Jewel. Hi.
Happy 2020 to you.
Yes, thank you, and happy 2020 to you as well.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on your book. I know your book will be coming out really soon, and I know that this has been a goal of yours just from reading your book.
Yes, since as long as I can remember, I've always been an avid reader, but I think it became a real goal of mine. I think around my senior year of college, and I finally was able to make it happen last year, and it comes out the 21st of this month, January 21st, actually.
And you've also gotten started. You probably finished by now, but I know there's an audio component to the book. So what is that like? Because you are the host, obviously, of a podcast. Do the two overlap? Did this feel like a different experience in any way?
Oh, this feels like a completely different experience. Recording an audiobook, because a lot of times you think you speak how you write, and your voice sounds familiar to you. But as you're reading what you're writing, as you're reading what you wrote, you want to think about the listener as well. So certain colloquialisms that you just normally just blurt out when you speak, that can't you try to limit those in the audiobook, and that's kind of been my challenge. I'm actually still recording it. Actually, it's been because we have so much else going on right now. We're actually preparing for the book signing, so we're trying to do all of that together. So the blog still has to run, the podcast still has to run. I'm trying to record the audiobook, and we're trying to put on this big event. So it's taking a little longer than expected, but I'm actually enjoying the challenge.
That's great. So what about the challenge do you enjoy?
Well, because I've seen a lot of authors I admire going through the same thing as well. When they post pictures of them, recording and things like that. So I always wanted to do that. I wanted the total experience. You know what I mean? Of being an author, the edits, going through a lot of edits, going through just all night just writing. So this audiobook is actually recording it is just become another component of that experience, and it's like writing the book all over again. Not really, but it's a lot of late nights as well with this as well, because you want to make sure everything is quiet, because we didn't have a lot of professional audio equipment, but you don't want to record when there's a lot of noise going on outside, or there's a lot of noise going on in the house. So that's really what the challenge has been.
Right. Okay. And I know that, speaking of books and authors, one of your favorite books was Letters to a Young Man by Hill Harper. And yes. I would like to know, what was it about this book that resonated with you?
Well, my mother first got me that book. I want to say I was in high school. I was a junior, senior. No, I was either a sophomore or junior in high school, 15, 16 years old. And in high school, for some reason, I didn't, I stopped reading for pleasure. I was only reading for academic. If my teacher gave me 4 chapters to read, I was reading 4 chapters. I wasn't going past that. I just kind of lost a love for reading. And then I remember coming back home from my freshman year of college. I just saw the book staring at me one day. I was like, I'm going to read this. It's not a really thick book. I was like, I'm going to read this. I'm going to make sure I read a chapter at night. And this is over the summer. I was like, I'm going to make sure I read a chapter at night. And once I started doing that, and then the way he wrote, it was an easy read, and it felt like he was talking to me, because a lot of the stuff he was talking about in the book, I was actually going through the same things. And my parents have always been there for me, but at a certain point, you kind of you want to talk about certain things with other people. And I use that book and Hill Harper. He doesn't even know who I am, but I use him as like a mentor of sorts. So that's probably why I resonated with that book so well.
He probably does know who you are, by the way.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great, really.
Yeah, and at the time, one of the times that you first read the book, I understand that you made a blog around it, but you say that that idea wasn't very successful and it wasn't you. So I would just like to know more about that.
So when I first read the book, Letters to a Young Brother, I read it. The first one I read it through it, and like I said, I found a lot that I resonated with. And then I'm going through college again. You know, it's a lot. It's as a young black man in college, the experience can be kind of interesting. So I'm going through a lot on all fronts. Coming back home to my old neighborhood, going through those experiences as well. And then I read the book again. And as I'm reading the book again, I don't necessarily agree with what he's saying, and it's because I'm just a little older now, and I said, it'd be dope if I like write back, and I don't care if he reads it, I don't care if anybody reads it. It'd be dope if I write back. So then once I started that, I felt like I said, like I wrote, like I felt cheesy, like I was just being not me. As I'm writing back to him, and I was just like, I don't know if this is gonna last. Like it lasted like maybe like 3 or 4 letters, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore, because it's just I'm cutting myself short. I'm stifling my own creativity in a way, and I was like, you know what? That's going back to the drawing board. If I wanted to start a blog, because I didn't even know if I wanted to do that. That did the whole getting serious about writing thing. That didn't come until I did my internship at the newspaper, and that's when I kind of fell in love with editorial and things like that.
Because you went to school for history, and
yes,
you got introduced to journalism. It was somebody else who saw the potential for you to get into journalism. So, what is it like being a journalist? Like, what have you applied from your experience in journalism to the UrbanX podcast?
Oh, that's okay. That's a good question. So, I guess what I've applied is that first I learned research skills. Okay, as a history major, and then I even applied, I guess, my history background to journalism because I can research. A lot of stuff like right now we hear about fake news and things like that and how misinformation gets spread. I didn't realize it was that rampant until until I even started the podcast, when people would send me links with these wild headlines, and then I would just click on it and just like one click to just know, okay, this is not real. This is you know what I mean? And that's one thing I've brought to it. Another thing is your writing gets. I feel like your writing gets stronger the more you do it. So, but it's two different styles of writing, I would say. So, for a blog post that's timely, like it's like current events, you have to get all your points out in 300 to 500 words. In a book, what I learned in writing a book was you have to walk the reader through a lot, be extremely descriptive in your thought process and like where you were going when certain ideas came.
Wow, it's very interesting. And one of the reasons why you wrote your book is because you think that the life and career journeys that we typically hear about tend to be about people who are famously accomplished. So can you tell us more about that, Malcom, and just your approach to making urban excellence, which, by the way, amazing stories, 11 different people, and I loved what you did with this book, Malcom. But yeah. Thank you.
So, in my journey, a lot of people, including myself, we look for inspiration elsewhere. We look for inspiration in people who've done it, and a lot of the times, that can sometimes you'll get motivation. Like, it's the new year right now. A lot of people are getting motivation just off the fact that it's, a start of a new year. So, in me and reading a bunch of, motivational books, watching videos and things like that, these people, that I totally admire, at a certain point, it's just like, all right, like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what you guys are telling me to do, but at the same time, it still feels like a disconnect somewhere. But then I would hang out with my friends. I have a group of friends who are all driven, doing their own things as well. And we all come across like the same challenges. Mm-hmm. And it felt so refreshing talking to them to know, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I know this is not as simple as just being disciplined. Yeah, it is, but those cliche words we hear all the time when we're listening to these people. So that was one of the reasons why I took to interviewing my peers so hard, because and another thing too, I always wanted to provide a platform to my peers as well. So it was like, when I would interview them, before I even started interviewing people for the book, I was interviewing because like I needed to find some inspiration in them, and it was like working back. And they didn't know that. A lot of the times they didn't know that, but I was finding inspiration in them. Like, I was interviewing one of my friends who has a clothing brand. And I'm like, how do you have a job? Because I had a 9-to-5 job as well. I'm like, how do you balance that? And he's telling me the way he does it. And I asked another friend how she does it. So I'm taking what works for me, and that's how the book actually came about.
How did it come down to choosing your peers for the book?
So that's a good question as well.
Thanks.
That came about because I wanted to get a varying spectrum of who was in the book. So I didn't want to just pick people who were entrepreneurs. I didn't want to just pick people who I guess had it all figured out. I wanted a lot of people, and a lot of these people, they'll tell you this as well. Like, they're still figuring it out. But what I saw in them and following them, because a lot of people are my friends, all of them are my friends. But what I saw in them, so a lot of the times they didn't see in themselves. So when I reached out to them, they were surprised. Like, wait, what? Really? Like, yeah, let's do it. And then, what else? Like, I'm trying to think. I would just, I also just kind of let, I guess, the universe speak to me, and to help me pick these people as well. For an example, you read, like, my younger brother's in there, and he's disabled, and
yeah, that's very touching.
Yeah, so he does a podcast weekly, with my father, and I'm watching him just, do his thing, and I'm like, okay, I hadn't even picked him yet. I'm like, okay, this is an obvious example right here. Like, why didn't I see this before? And I think once I started looking, people just started jumping out to me off the screen, and I just wanted a varying amount of people. I wanted somebody who is just trying to find their lane in the professional field. I wanted somebody who's an entrepreneur. I wanted somebody who does both. I wanted somebody who is trying to create a lane for an avenue for themselves where she's found difficulties. My friend Tia, who started a large Facebook group because she had a hard pregnancy, and I thought that was, and again, that has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. That has everything to do with just yourself. And I wanted Urban Excellence to speak to all of those things, not just what we see in the media, what is portrayed as success. I wanted success to mean a bunch of things so anybody could see themselves in these stories.
So for people who, the book is not out yet, but who do you find, have people decided whose story that they have maybe resonated with the most, or it's hard for people to pick?
And so the interesting thing, I gave everybody that's in the book got a copy, or they got 2 copies, and everybody that's in the book, they love their chapters, but they all picked another chapter that they just was their favorite for some reason.
That's beautiful.
And yes, yeah, that made me so excited. I was like, wow, okay. My father, he has a few chapters that he loves. He cried from one of the chapters. Like I picked him up one day, and he just had tears in his eyes. I was like, so he had a doctor's appointment. I was like, what's up? And he told me, he was like, yo, I just read one of these chapters, and I had no idea. And yeah, so that's what's been really interesting. A lot of people, and that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. I just wanted people to pick out different things from everybody else. I didn't want every chapter to be linear. I didn't want people to feel disconnected from anything. And that was one of the major things about this book.
So I'm not going to spoil anything, but I have to say, among one of my favorite chapters about the, well, there's so many, but yeah, I'm not going to spoil too much. But I like the whole, if I'm not mistaken, it's called Beyond the Box. And
yes.
That is something that one of the subjects in the book came up with as a way to get Black people, or just young people in general, to learn more about those who are part of Black history, those who shape Black history, besides the typical names that get mentioned and whatnot.
Yes, and again, that happened because I went to, and again, I don't want to spoil it too much as well, but I went to an event, and I had no book on my mind. I didn't think I was writing a book, or I knew I was writing a book. It was just, I just wanted inspiration to kind of find me in a way. And that was something that I happened to just walk into. You know what I mean? It wasn't planned. It was just like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. And then I know she does work like that on a regular basis. That wasn't new to her. And she was Yvette, like she was great.
So Malcom, what has, in terms of your audience, your UrbanX audience, the podcast listeners and the fans of it, how have they responded when they found out that you were writing a book?
Wow. So everybody was, I want to say, pleasantly surprised. I don't think it's something that was like completely expected for me for some reason. I don't know. My podcast listeners know I write on the blog. We have a lot of subscribers on the blog. And I think I've always hinted at, writing a book. I have a book club that,
Right.
I recommend like 5 or 6 books a month to people, and they know I read. Like we can be talking about a topic, and I would always bring it around to some book I read. And once I announced I writing a book, like everybody was super proud of me. I was nervous to even announce it because this is like, like my baby. I worked really hard on it, and to let people read it and critique it, I was just super nervous about it, and I was just super nervous even to announce it because I've never been the type to really promote myself. Even with the podcast, like I don't even like promoting the podcast sometimes because I don't want people to get annoyed with me promoting stuff. But I decided that once I announced this book, I was going to shamelessly promote myself and be proud of my work, and that's what I've been doing. And people have been appreciating it. And even people I went to college with, I went to high school with, that I just knew around the neighborhood. They would stop me in the street if I saw them. They're like, "You really wrote a book?" Like, yeah, man. And then like they were like pre-order on the spot.
That is fantastic, Malcom. Based on your experience of writing your book, what advice can you give to people, especially those who would like to do the work or continue the work of highlighting people who might not necessarily have a big name or be well known yet, because you never know what the future holds? But what advice can you give?
So some practical advice that I use myself for writing the book. I wrote it a chapter at a time, and that was so I wouldn't get psyched out by the word count. So every chapter, I opened up a new Word document, and then I just wrote from there. And then once that was done, okay, next Word document. So that's like just real practical advice for somebody, because a lot of people, especially with writing a book, like you can write all day for a week, and literally look at the word count and feel like you haven't done anything. And I feel like that's what gets discouraging. So that's one piece of advice I would give. Other advice I would say is like try to be consistent, because once you write and then you stop for a while, it's hard to get back. And then once you get back, you probably won't like what you wrote, because you're looking at it with a different pair of eyes. So that was a challenge for me as well. I guess one of the other times I tried to write a book, I was writing. I got like a ways through, like almost like 40,000 words in. I got a new job, and then I didn't come back to it for like a month, and completely hated everything I wrote. And I trashed that one. Well, I still have it somewhere, but I just was like, no, this is not gonna be the one. When it comes to trying to highlight people in your community, I just say you just have to like keep your ear to the streets, for lack of a better terms. There's a lot of people that are in our lives that you may not know are doing some incredible things, and that's up to you to set what your standard is for what's amazing to you. One of my friends who's in the book, she's a teacher, but she has a girls club, because she feels like a lot of the girls are going through a lot, and she wants these girls and her students to have a free space to talk and get mentored. So that was beautiful. And I thought, and I know a lot of teachers, but I just thought that extra piece right there was important. So that's why I picked her to actually be in the book. It's a lot of things. What else could be advice for writing? Don't edit while you write. That's a big one, because a lot of that'll slow you up, because you're writing and then you're reading it back, and I guess little changes here and there. But once you're too hard on yourself while you're writing, you'll never get past that page or that chapter. You'll get an editor once your manuscript is done, and then your editor will go through it, and that's when you can make those big edits. But don't edit while you write. I think that slows a lot of people up.
Yeah, I agree. So basically, you're saying to get your thoughts out there first, and then clean it up later, or that leave it up to the editor to do that.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean just write a bunch of garbage on the screen, but it means just don't try to do too many things at once. Like you have a goal in mind and what you want to get on, what you want to get on the computer screen. But I think once you try to mix that in with making it sound intellectual, that it'll get muddied.
I also am curious about some of your preferences and like your reading style and everything. I know that you said one of the reasons that you're doing the audio version of the book is because people in general, you have people that prefer audio books, and some people, they want like that hard physical copy of the book. And you said, but I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, of course, you don't really believe that there's no such thing really when people try to say, oh, I don't have time for reading books. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't. Agree with that.
Right.
I don't. Yeah, I really don't.
Because.
So okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I just feel like there's always some time to read. It could be super early in the morning, and when you get up before the world, gets at you, on your lunch break, on the train, on the way to work. So I feel like there's always somewhere to read, and I think the thing is, just like writing a book, we look at the mountain, and we just look at how tall the mountain is, and in that case, in reading the book, we look at how many pages we got through that day. And a lot of people, they don't feel like they've gotten through enough of the book and then they stop altogether. And I think, once you should just set a goal for yourself, like, I'm going to read 10 pages today. I'm going to read 20 pages today. And then you slowly but surely, you'll see yourself get through it. And I think also as well, you'll start to get a really good feel for what the books you like to read. Yeah, I'm not a really big fiction fan, but if it's a story that gets me, I'll read it. You know what I'm saying? Like most of the books I read, are nonfiction books. They are not necessarily motivational. Some of them can be considered that, but a lot of them are like practical in what they tell you to do, or what they advise you to do, rather. So that's another thing when I say like people, like, you always have some time to read. Like, we have 24 hours in a day. Like, this, if it means spending like an hour less time watching TV, then that's it. Or 20 minutes, just read something. In my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I think it also might be because I totally agree with you, by the way, but I think it also might be that some people, they think that they have to finish the book by a certain point, right? It's like,
Right.
yeah. So would you say that you're a slow reader, or what even is a slow reader? Are you a fast reader? Do you like to read multiple books in rotation? What's your reading style?
So I like to read. I just stick to one book per, you know, sitting. Like, I don't really like to read too many books at the same time. I
Mm.
don't know. That's just really never been my. I tried that once, and I didn't really. I guess kept getting confused. You know, what happened in what book and who was telling me what type of information. So I just stick to one book. But I don't think I'm really a slow reader. There's certain books where they can be like jam packed with information, and I'd rather not just speed through that. I don't like to read for the sake of just saying, "Oh, I read that book. I read it." I like to try to get something out of them. So
Mm.
I don't really like rushing through them. I'm not really a big note taker in the book. I'll admit. I know some people who highlight, who need to take notes, and I'm not really big on that. But I like to read to make sure I retain as much as I can.
And you're not afraid to reread a book either.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I've reread Deep Work by Cal Newport a few times. I've reread The Alchemist a few times. That's one of the few fiction books I like. I've reread Ego is the Enemy many a time, because I think that was one of the books that I read that I feel like the author was talking direct. Like, it felt like he at the end of each sentence he wrote my name at, like, don't do this, Malcolm, at the end of this each book. And sometimes I just need a refresher, so I read that book all the time. And I think a lot of people should reread books. You'll pick up a lot more through the second time than you did the first time.
Hmm. What is something that you hope readers will get out of your book, Urban Excellence, Unveiling Extraordinary Stories for Everyday People?
So I want people to understand that success really means what you want it to mean. I want people to read this book and understand that they don't have to let the the society's standards of what excellence means to dictate what it means for them. I want them to understand that living a life that's fulfilling, living a life that makes them happy, can be considered success and should be considered success. I don't want people to, and this is why I don't want people to aim for something that they actually don't really want. And that can be, money and fame and things like that. Some people who just obviously want to live their lives, but just want to be happy. If that's considered success, let them, and I want people to also celebrate their wins, no matter how big or small. That goes even to now. It's you know we're 13 days into the new year, and a lot of people. I see my gym already weaning out. Like, it's not as crowded as it was when the new year first turned. But one of the things I always recommend for people to do is celebrate small wins. So if your goal was to get in the gym every day, celebrate that first week you got in the gym. You know what I mean? Then celebrate the 2 weeks you got in the gym. Then 3 weeks, and build upon that. A lot of what I've done up to this point is just a lot. It's a culmination of a lot of my experiences, and I want people to understand that their story is important. Everybody's story is important. Everybody has a story to tell. That is important, and I just want people to, be excellent. their own way.
Wow. And guys, I highly recommend that you check out Urban Excellence. It is a very compelling book. It's touching. It's also well written. And admittedly, I like different types of books, but I love, especially, my favorite things are work that is meant to empower people and uplift people. And I love when people, because there's so many people out here who are just doing extraordinary things and great things, and you probably just wouldn't know it. So it takes people like you, for example, Malcom, to give those people a platform, and like you also mentioned, you're supporting your friends as well, and so that's what it's all about. So all that to say, you guys have to check out the book. I really would. There's so much that I could honestly ask you, Malcom. If people choose to reread Urban Excellence, like for those who are going to reread it, what's something that you want them to pick up on the second or third time?
So I would like when people, if and when people reread the book, I want them to take. Hopefully, it's at a different place in their life, and I want them to take pointers, I guess, or inspiration from different stories. So there's 11 different stories in it, and they're going through their own, different things. Somebody's handicapped, somebody is dealing with, mental health issues as well. I want everybody to be able to pick up the book at any point in their life and get something new from somebody else in the book, because I feel like although these people are important and who they are, I feel like that can be anybody's story as well. And I want people to understand that and hopefully see themselves in these people. I think that's the big thing I want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And would you ever consider writing a novel? I know you mentioned that you're not too big on fiction, but do you see yourself writing a novel?
I do. I just want to make sure I'm able to like fully, map out the idea.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I just want. I'm not sure what yet. I have a few ideas in my notes, but I'm not. I have to like really flesh them out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And would you ever consider making a documentary if you haven't already?
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of my. I'm not sure I will put it out in 2020, but I want to start it in 2020.
Okay.
Because something like that, I feel like takes a lot of time. And I'm definitely going to, for sure.
Malcom X Bowser, everyone. It was so great talking to you, Malcom, and would love to talk with you again in the future. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And
Thank you so.
Let everyone know how they can keep up with you, Malcom.
Oh, okay. So you can keep up with me on Twitter and Instagram. My Twitter and Instagram handles are at top_XTH on Twitter and Instagram. You can subscribe to the blog at UrbanX.NYC. What else? I'm Malcom X Bowser on Facebook. You can also email me as well, malcombowser51@gmail.com. And yeah, and I'll respond back to you. I'm very friendly. I can write.
And the book?
And the book comes out on January 21st on Amazon.com. Everywhere you can get books. Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Target. You can also visit UrbanXbook.com as well to get the book as well. It'll be available everywhere.
Wow.
And also, if you're in the New York area, when did this episode come out?
It'll come out this week, probably at the end of this week.
Okay, cool. That's perfect. So, if you're in the New York area, we're actually having a book launch / signing on the 19th in Harlem, New York, at 109 East, 116th Street, from 4 to 10. We're gonna have merchandise there that we we sell on the podcast, on the blog. I'm going to be there. The people who are in the book will be there as well. and my father and I are going to do a quick podcast Q&A about the book, and we're going to have a great time.
Yes, that is definitely an event to check out. January 19th in Harlem, 4 to 10 p.m., as you said.
Yes.
That is a big day. And I also want, before I let you go, I want you to also tell us about UrbanX.NYC, about your blog.
Oh, okay. So UrbanX.NYC is a platform father and I created, and it is a place where we have opinion articles, business, people write about business, or we'll cover a business story, current events, sports. That's where we house the podcast episodes as well. We have our YouTube videos as well there. That's our hub. UrbanX.NYC is a place for everybody. We encourage writers to, send in articles, send in op-ed articles, because we love to get everybody's opinion and things like that. And that's where we just do everything.
All right.
We have our shop there as well, everything.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. And thank you to all the listeners. Until next time, so book and cool.